Look what the cat dragged in. And that was directed at myself because the last video I recorded was in 2024. I am very intuitive with the kind of content that I create, / whenever I can form a full thought, especially with how overstimulating and chaotic life is these days. It's hard to just like sit and have something that you're ready to talk about. And there are many themes that I could sit here and dissect for the year of 2025. But I think one of the biggest things that has shifted for me this year is my relationship to the internet. Some of you who are watching this right now on my YouTube may be new, maybe you came into my practice during this very particular timeline, and I thank you for joining us here. But there are many people who got the chance to bear witness to my early internet days. For those of you who have been here for that long, thank you. You've been through many transformations with me, which is something I wanted to talk about in this video today. Also, that aside, if you're new here, welcome to Existentially Fed. This is a long-form video series, podcast, whatever you want to call it, and this is just a place where we can sit with the many questions that come up in this lifetime and spend some time thinking about them collaboratively in community. If there's anything that I have learned this past year, especially when it comes to the internet, sometimes we are processing a lot of the same things at the same time, which is what inspired me to do this video. Some people refer to the 90s as their inspo, some people refer to the 70s. I was tickled when I saw that people were yearning for the return of Stud Zendaya. And if you don't know what the Stud Zendaya reference is, it's the memification of these photos from Zendaya from like 2012, 2013 at the peak of the swag Tumblr era, which was like an intersection of streetwear, hip-hop culture, rap and emo culture, nerd culture, geek imagery. You got the glasses, but you pairing it with the snapback. You got the I Heart Nerds chain, but you're wearing a Lil Wayne shirt. It was the perfect melting pot for the different types of marginalized. That was also the peak of YouTube. Memes were a thing. First ever YouTubers were coming out, and people were just using their webcam. Remember Cam Wow? Remember You Now? Remember Omegle? I'm seeing a lot of reference to this chapter of the internet, like roughly the 2010s to about 2016. That chapter of the internet was when the internet was in its adolescence. It was in its rebellious phase. We went from having our lives that existed without the internet to, spoon feeding ourselves Instagram when it first came out. Some people are already familiar with MySpace. Facebook was kind of dominating the space at the time. And there was still a lot of curiosity. We hadn't gotten to the point where we fully understood what impact the internet would have on our, not only the media we consume, but the culture that we exist in, the opinions we would have, the ways we connect with our community. We are at the point in the internet where its newness has worn off, where a lot of our lives depend on the internet. That is a complete shift from that innocent, playful, let me just post a picture of my plate, the trust that we had in the internet, the illusion of privacy that we thought that we had, and our expectations for when we would share ourselves was just so that our friends and family could keep up with us. And maybe if you were building a platform, you would be happy with like 10 to 20 people seeing your stuff. But now the goalpost is trying to go viral, where you can literally take your name and make it your paycheck. That raises the stakes for all types of engagement on the internet. I wanted to look back at some of the more innocent times of my internet digital footprint. So today we're gonna go through some of my old Tumblr themes. Much like MySpace, you could customize your blog to fit your personality, and if you were a real gays who code type person back then you would change the HTML to have some wacky incorporations in your blog. Like when people would click on my blog, the first thing that would pop up is a music player and it would play Marina and the Diamonds. Tumblr did really raise me. So at the beginning of my Tumblr usage, I was identifying as like a scene kid, emo kid. Crisp bangs. The things I posted were grungy, very concerning lyrics, or just like sad screenshots of girls with like ripped tights and flannels. Music I listened to, Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens, just a bunch of white men hooting and hollering. And of course, around that time was also when we were having these courses in schools around stranger danger and meeting people online. And so people were really curious about the ways that they can meet new people, not just keep in contact with their friends and their family, but meet people outside of their bubble. Maybe they lived in a small town or they were alternative. And a lot of those safe spaces for people would be found in subcultures that could be expressed through art, through photography, through music. As somebody who grew up in a pretty strict household, didn't have a lot of representation for my interests, I found a lot more evidence that people like me existed by venturing off into the internet. Tumblr was a beautiful place to archive emotions, ideas. People were archiving who they were in bits and pieces and collaging pieces of the internet, pieces of things that other people had created to build a world for themselves. And that trickled into Instagram. People were very casual on it. People sometimes would post like a picture of a bus stop, a picture of their coffee. There was an intimacy there that wasn't feared yet, that made the internet a more welcoming place for people who were still figuring out who they were. We have all of this content, we're romanticizing life, and I was finally starting to have conversations with myself about like what being an artist could be like. At the beginning of the internet, there was a level of detachment from it because we still had a lot of things to take care of in the 3D. The internet wasn't ingrained in our routines enough for us to really shape our perceptions of ourselves around it. But now we're in a place where the internet's presence is ever looming. It's even in the places where you don't have a physical phone. It's affected the types of technology we have access to now, which fundamentally shape a lot of the systems that we rely on. It also has impacted the ways we archive history, archive our past. We don't just have physical evidence anymore, and as some of those physical relics start to dissolve and disappear, the internet and digital archiving is the only way to create some kind of permanence. We were not prepared, right, for what was to come. Spreading of misinformation, like the spreading of AI content that isn't real, deep fakes being a thing, anybody being able to have access to your account at any time, your data being sold. You make a viral video, you acting up, and your job's gone in the next 24 hours. And they're also posting a statement on Twitter about how they fired you. It's not funny, but like... And then in the Twitter replies, you'll have like at Burger King being like, oh, that is so not tea. So not tea, mama boots the house down, slay. Things are weird, okay? And we have gotten to a point where we can't recreate those heydays without deconstructing how we got to this point, how things transpired and rapidly changed so quickly that we lost control of it. The most control people can have these days in regards to the internet is sometimes not being on it. And what do you do when a lot of your relationships are codependent on the very things that you're trying to divest from? There is some kind of sacrifice that comes from changing your relationship to these tools, because that's what they were intended to be at first, tools. But now we have two lives that exist at the same time. We have our life in person and we have our life on the internet, our digitized life. And the ways that they have been forced to become inseparable is terrifying. Back in my day, when you were looking for a job, you would print out your resume, walk into the place and hand it to them and say, hey, I want to work here. If you do that now, they will look at you like you're bugging. And now we have AI bots who are reviewing your resumes and scanning them on whether or not you are qualified to work there. And as somebody who is born of the last generation to have a time in their life where the internet was not a thing, we have to start thinking very intentionally about how we use these things, because there's no going back. It's only forward from here. It's only more advancement. It's only more technology. It's only more platforms and more people on the internet and more conversations happening at the same time. So like I said before, it's not a surprise to me that people are yearning for the heyday of the internet. The point where we had learned just enough about it that we felt comfortable using it. So it felt powerful to use at the time. It felt exciting, probably like the same way people felt when they were making TikToks for the first time in quarantine and they were like changing their lives with one video. That our survival is caught up in this entity that doesn't physically exists. It exists in our minds, it exists in our phones. At some point, I think we had transitioned from us shaping the internet and what we wanted it to look like and how we wanted it to function, what we wanted it to give us back, to the internet being what shapes us. When you look back at some of the old nostalgia content and things that we were sharing at the time, a lot of it was ahead of its time. A lot of it was people trying new things in that moment, not knowing that a few years from now, people are going to be making edits of it and being like, take me back. This video isn't to be pessimistic. I actually think that we are reaching that reset where people are kind of reclaiming their autonomy when it comes to their digital presence. People are diversifying what platforms they use and forming micro communities under those shared interests. People are starting blogs, people are bringing back websites. And I think that people are looking for ways to communicate their feelings again. I think this is just a reminder of how much we wield the media that we consume. And if enough people are yearning for a time in our lives when we were playing, I think we're at a point where now we have to find a way to harmonize both worlds. Our digital worlds. How do we model the futures that we want to see in both of those spaces? I'm not saying prioritize the internet over your life, but I am saying that we should not expect it to go anywhere anytime soon. I think in Australia, they're changing the age limit or age requirements to be able to use social media so that teenagers can't use social media. And I think to when I was a teenager, what would have happened to me if I didn't have access to social media. I think we can say there's so many dark sides to the internet, but I think to just blame young people for it is lazy, because we are creating the media that we consume. We're creating the rules, the etiquette, if you will. We wield the power to make things viral, to record something, to photograph something, to write something, to interview someone. We are all contributing to this space together. And so as a creative who has formed a lot of their practice on the internet and through the people I've met through the screen, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be making these videos if I hadn't used this space for me. And if we truly saw the internet as the bridge that it could be to some of our dreams and aspirations that exist far beyond the bubbles that we exist in every day, I think that a lot of really cool things could come out of that. I also don't want the internet to become too much of a product of the very people who oppress us, because once they encroach on our digital space, the wild, wild west of the internet, our freedoms in person will also disappear. A lot of modern day revolutions, if you will, wouldn't have existed if someone didn't have access to the stories of the people that came before them. I think it's the unfortunate responsibility of Gen Z / the millennials to redirect how interwoven we are with these things and what our lives will look like as they progress and get more advanced. Because we're going to have to teach the younger generation how to navigate all of this, and are going to be really responsible for making sure that people stay connected with the earth stay present in the real world, stay empathetic, stay creative, and we are going to be the ones who educate about how these things intersect with each other and how to preserve your humanity as they intersect. So I'm feeling all the things clearly. This is my first video of 2025 and it's the end of the year, and in a few days it's gonna be 2026, and I think that this is gonna be one of my intentions, is just understanding how I want to exist in the digital ether and in my physical life. I think 2026 is going to be the year of diversifying media. I think people are going to be doing a lot more DIY. I want to go back to creating content, but I want to go back to creating content that I want to see and I want to experience, that is also accommodating for me and also holds me accountable. Like, I want to make content that challenges me to watch longer videos. I want to make content that requires me to do more research. I want to make art that requires me to learn my softwares differently, learn how to work with my hands differently. I just want to continue to flex those muscles that are being dulled out by all of this stuff that is happening. I want to create things with my loved ones, my friends, create experiences that bring people together, like the archiving of my life in general. I want to reignite the romance in that process. Posting a selfie because you thought it was silly and you thought it was funny. Posting a view because you thought it was beautiful, not because you thought it was going to go viral, or not because you wanted to flex on them, but because you want to remember this moment. I've been learning a lot about the subjects that I really care about in new ways. And yeah, I will return to this platform where I can, when I can. And if you have any like wild pictures of yourself from like the early 2000s to like early 2010s, sound off in the comments. Existentially Fed is for you, but also for me, and I'm so grateful that we have this space. See you next year.